Revolution of common sense.
Revolution of common sense.
A revolution of common sense.
Truth was once common sense, but today, truth is uncommon. Explore biblical truths around faith, business, and politics with Peter Demas. Uncommon sense in current times.
Hey folks, welcome to Uncommon Sense in Current Times. Today we have retired Colonel John Mills. He's the author of War Against the Deep State. When Donald Trump campaigned for a second term, he vowed to demolish the deep state, which was referring to a shadowy group of unelected bureaucrats who wield power behind the scenes, regardless of which party holds office. Colonel Mills is a national security professional. He served in the Cold War, the War on Terror, and now what he calls the Great Power Showdown. He's a former director of cybersecurity policy at the Department of Defense, served at the National Security Council under 2 administrations, and a senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy. Colonel Mills, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you, Peter. It's an honor to be on the show. Thank you.
All right. So, you hear this stuff, deep state, you hear this, it seems to be more of a popular term and probably lasts like probably 5-10 years. There's, when you first heard it, it was these kind of crazed conspiracy theorists talking about it and everything from there. So can you just define what deep state is so that everybody kind of understands what we're talking about, make certain we're on the same page on this?
Well, Peter, I think first of all, there's about 3 ways to describe it. But first, there's kind of 3 groupings of personalities. There's the bureaucrats inside the U.S. government. I mean, I was a bureaucrat, even as a uniformed military, could be a bureaucrat. There's the technocrats. Those are the super experts, like the Faucis of the world. And then there's the plutocrats, those like in big tech that up until the return of President Trump had great influence. The Zuckerbergs, the Bezos, things like that. There's also kind of 4 corners of the deep state. I call it big government, obviously, big tech, and I group really legacy media into big tech. There's big academia. I'm all for big academia. I mean, colleges, but it has to be accountability. But then there's also big pharma, which has had great influence. But I think and in the deep state, the book, The War Against the Deep State, what we're seeing and what DOGE is validating is an unlawful 4th, 5th, and 6th branch of government. The 4th is the administrative state. And, the poster child for that is the EPA, and Lee Zeldin is helping to tear that down. But it shows where government agencies take regulation and act as if it's law. No. I mean, all regulation should flow from law, but you can't create law out of regulation, which is clearly what the EPA was doing up at the Environmental Protection Agency. The 5th branch of government is the unlawful fusion of big tech and federal law enforcement, federal intelligence. We're seeing the wrecking ball being taken to that. And thank God for Elon Musk, who took over Twitter, and frankly, I don't know if we'd be a free country at this point in time if he had not brought Twitter to X and gave a platform. And then he was the first of the tech titans that said, "No, this is wrong. I'm siding with Trump." And the 6th branch of government are the nonprofits. Now, my book was written before DOGE, but we knew something was wrong with nonprofits. We knew something was going on. And I'm all for nonprofits. I'm not questioning many universities are nonprofits. I love universities. I love nonprofits, but there has to be accountability and transparency. And what we're seeing is with the exposure of U.S. aid as a start, but also EPA and money given to the former candidate in Georgia, we're just seeing a mass money laundering. So those are the 3 branches of government that I go over inside War on the Deep State, and DOGE is just validating every one of those.
So how is it then, how do you distinguish that with, take DOGE, for example, that is not that 4th branch that you were referencing earlier? Like why is it different than, say, another branch of the government? Is it because it's politically aligned, or do you find other ways of defining that and differentiating maybe an appropriate regulatory agency versus one that is not?
Okay, you lost me a little bit, Peter.
So when you said the fourth branch of government had to do with administrative agencies,
yeah, yeah.
you have DOGE, which is technically a type of administrative agency. They're looking for ways to eliminate waste. How is that not part of the deep state or that fourth branch of government that you were referencing earlier?
Okay, well, I would say DOGE, by presidential direction, as part of the executive branch, it is exposing spending and malfeasance in spending on a scale never before seen. And so that's a good thing. And that is, all of these agencies and departments and agencies are supposed to have inspector general offices. I'm all for IGs, but what shocked me is what DOGE showed was the failure of IGs to properly classify and account federal dollars going out the door. I have been through so many IG reports, and I work closely with IGs. The role of the IG is foundational, but it showed the failure of. So this is like DOGE is doing what the inspector generals we thought we're doing are supposed to be doing, not properly coding outlays going out the door. I just can't get over that. That is such a foundational part of an inspector general's role. How could they not previously identified that? This is like you or me writing a check out of a checkbook, not putting in a name, not putting in a purpose, not even putting it in the register, registrar, and just handing the check to somebody. This is crazy. And so that's so foundational to what the U.S. government executive branch is supposed to be doing, but DOGE just showed they haven't been doing it.
So is the way that you define it and distinguish it then, and I know you kind of go in details of it in chapter 7 of your book, but the way you distinguish it then from one that would be part of the three branches, if they're doing what the three branches are designed to do, versus what is kind of external from what would be maybe classified within a constitutional framework or a legal framework, is that how you distinguish between a regulatory agency that is good and one that is part of the deep state?
Well, there always has to be transparency and accountability. So the three basic branches for everybody's orientation are the executive branch. President Trump is in charge of the executive branch. There's the legislative branch, which is Congress. There's the judicial branch, which we're seeing is a bit out of control right now with justices like D.C. District Judge Boasberg, who is ruling on saying it's unlawful for President Trump to conduct these deportations of members of designated terrorist groups while not reporting or acknowledging or accusing himself that his wife, his daughter, and his sister all work for nonprofits who are receiving government funds to advocate for illegal aliens. So it's crazy. But so DOGE is doing in the executive branch clearly what the executive branch has not been doing, which is properly accounting. And again, the two key terms are transparency and accountability. So we have had a massive failure. Now, is the legislative branch culpable in this gross malfeasance of use of our taxpayers' money? Well, yeah, actually, I'd say they are too, because they never asked the basic questions. Oh, USAID, we didn't know you were spending money to throw elections in Brazil, South Korea, and now Romania. So yeah, there's culpability on the legislative branch there too. They failed in their job to even understand what they were they were voting for money, and they didn't even know what it was being spent for.
Now, in all fairness to them, though, I mean, the volume of papers that come in, the expectation that they can read every bill, every page, is unreasonable to expect of any human being. I see that at the state level. I see it at the federal level. What do you propose on how they can do that to find out where that money is being spent so that they can see it? Because it appears to me with the volume that's coming out on it that the legislative branch cannot serve adequately in the checks and balances. What do you propose for that to make that a little separate?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it represents at the top level a government that is just simply too large and complex. We just have to just pump the brakes here. We can't let this thing called the U.S. government continue when nobody seems to be in control of it. It's a blob that just we don't even know what it's doing, and that's presuming that people are not intentionally nefarious and malfeasant. But on the simple question of we should have every single member of Congress sign under penalty of felony that they understand what they are writing and the legislation. The legislation is ridiculous. It is too large and complex. This is why the 1,500 pages of Obamacare. Nobody can make sense out of that.
Right.
What DOGE has also introduced, which again, I have many years behind the veil inside the deep state, but what has been so refreshing about DOGE is those who are not experts on the US government processes within minutes using advanced analytical techniques, again, identified this simple, basic housekeeping measure. How can you send US government dollars out the door without proper coding on what it's for? I mean, that is so foundational. That's not complex. That's not the U.S. government being too complex. It is a failure, and I think not just a gross failure, probably intentional. And it really shocks me that inspector generals have allowed this to happen.
But this has been going on for long periods of time. I mean, we go back to the 1800s. We see, the president was called Rutherford B. Hayes. I mean, because, we see all sorts of in local and state and federal. We see all the different, the bosses that took over the Tammany Hall situation in New York. I mean, we see this type of corruption that has always occurred. Why is this time and this year like unique to us? And yet we were able to grow, we were able to be successful, we were able to do a lot of stuff. Why is this level of corruption so unique versus what we have seen pretty much from the history of our country and probably others as well? Because
now we have the transparency to be rapidly able to identify it and question it. I mean, this is not rocket science. If somebody who's not even 21 years old can rapidly use data analytics to understand this. Okay, sorry, all those people who are self-declared experts in the Beltway and the swamp. Okay, everybody should be fired. Everybody should be fired. How can we possibly? You and I would be put in jail by a county sheriff for just throwing checks out to the wind like this. This is pathetic. So there is something we can do about it. Just because there's been past malfeasance doesn't mean we just continue on this pathway. It's at a scale where this is how civilizations collapse. And so we can't just say, well, it's too big, too complicated. It happened in the past. We'll just let it keep going. No, that's how civilizations collapse and go away.
So we're looking at all this, and obviously you brought up the 6 different branches, and I agree with you completely of where they are. I would throw media in as part of kind of the big tech kind of coordination there as well. So, but when I look at this, if I try to coordinate my family to meet at a restaurant at a certain time, I can't do that. I mean, it is so to do something at this large of a scale seems to be almost impossible to coordinate something like this. Do you think there is a coordinator behind it, a creator behind a lot of this? Or do you think this is just a lot of different pieces that just take advantage of the circumstances and each kind of working out of its own to create the mess that we're in right now? Okay, well, let's take the easiest question first on coordinating a family meal. I'll get with you offline and I'll show you how to do that. Now, is there a puppet master behind this? I think there is. It's the globalist mentality. It's the George Soros of the world.
And this is what's so fascinating about what's happened with this election. Not only have the Dems lost the narrative, they've lost major demographics, and they've lost total credibility in so many areas. Like, we're not going to let a billionaire look at the U.S. government spending. Well, what about George Soros? I thought he was a billionaire, and clearly he's had immense influence on what's going on. So it's groups like, let's say the Aspen Institute, which is kind of the domestic, Davos crowd, where they get together and they slurp down smoked salmon. Well, they think big thoughts, oftentimes on the government dole. And hey, when I was in government, hey, we sent people to the Aspen get confab all the time. Didn't even think twice about it. No, from now on, no, zero. No, that's government largesse being with the elites controlling it. But let's go to Davos and the World Economic Forum. I mean, this is serious. This is not just a cartoon character villain of Klaus Schwab. That we're going to control the world. We're going to make irreversible progress. This guy's sick. This guy's sick. How does he have any clue as to what me, my family, my children, my church think, do, know, and who cares what he thinks? And he's going to sit here and lecture somebody, and he's a global, we're going to make them eat bugs. Well, as soon as I see him chowing down on bugs, I might, lead by example there, Klaus. So we can't let these inside of government. I mean, I saw all these things. We would send we'd send U.S. government reps to the World Economic Forum, and we're sending them. So never even thought to question it. Now we know better.
So I guess that's kind of I guess what my point is. So when you look at that and you're sending people to World Economic Forum, you were part of that, but he didn't call you up. Klaus didn't call you up personally and be like, hey, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. There had to have been something a lot more coordinated where you were kind of part of a system, but you weren't even aware that you were part of the system.
It's these annual policy, strategy documents that come out from the United Nations, from the U.S. government, from the World Economic Forum. Wow, if you look through them, they're all saying the same thing. Isn't that interesting? So that's how essentially the orchestration of these and you just like, hey, the Institute for Peace, hey, this is the National Endowment for Democracy. Hey, we're going to do these things because that's what we're going to become. Net carbon negative. I don't know, all these crazy terms. They don't even know what they mean. And this is, you go down to Panama and it's a test bed in the Americas for the WEF and the UN and all these big banners, Project 2030, all these crazy things. That's how all these international meetings, they just start parroting the same talking points and nobody questions it. And if you do, you're an enemy of the state.
What was your tipping point? Like, where did you kind of look at this and be like, wait a second, this is what's going on? Was it one thing or was it built up over time?
Well, in my first book, the Nation Will Follow, it was really it was about July of 2016 when I was rushing to a meeting in the Pentagon, and I saw a former Bush appointee. He was a good friend, a mentor. I go, well, this is this. I was rushing to a meeting. He was rushing to a meeting, and I ran into him. And I, said, hey, what you doing in the building? And the Pentagon. And he goes, oh, I'm a graybeard on a project. I go, oh, okay. So a former Bush person is a graybeard. That's somebody with, like you or me, has a beard that is gray and is obviously wise, and renders, wisdom in these different forums. And I said, hey, you're gonna vote for Trump at the convention, right? And his response changed everything when I realized everything Donald J. Trump was saying was true. Because at that time I was conservative, but I was more of a Cruz guy. But his response says, no, we see more opportunities with her. And from that point on, everything Donald J. Trump made perfect sense. And I go, holy smokes. I just about choked the guy right there on the spot. I said, who is we and what opportunities do you see? This is in advance of the 2016 convention, where, and by that time I'd seen Donald J. Trump had knocked out 16 in a row, I said, I'm slow to pick up on these things. Actually, I'm with that guy. And and I go, holy smokes, right there, I know there was a deep state, there was a swamp, there was a uniparty, and many Republicans were rhinos. From that point on, everything I knew, we were going in contravention of constitutional purposes for the American citizen.
So for the American citizen, though, I mean, the average person does not, they're affected by the deep state. They're affected by the decisions that many of these people make, but they're either helpless or they at least feel helpless. So when you're looking at them and you're talking to them, you're talking to people that are listening to you right now. One, how do they recognize that it is something that's coming from the deep state and not something coming from, let's just take again, DOGE and Elon Musk that we talked about at the beginning? And then two, what can they do about it once they recognize it, if anything?
Well, let's just take care of the second question first, because I think that's really the most important is everybody put down your bowl of loudmouth soup and get involved in your county. The American system is based upon the 3,300 counties in America. Some places call them, by different names and things like that. The most important thing is this is where we get corruption in the American system. There's roughly 30 counties that are dirty, dirty, dirty. That's your Fulton County, Georgia. That's your Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. That's your Maricopa, Arizona. But there's lots of other counties that are, this is again, clarity, transparency, accountability, even at the county level. That's where the rubber meets the road. You can watch all these great shows, you can bellow and on social media, but if you're not involved in the election process, and I'll tell you, the key personalities are those, they're called election registrars in your county. Sometimes they're called recorders, like in Arizona, they're called recorders. They're called various names. Sometimes there's kind of a sub, like in Michigan and Pennsylvania, it's kind of below the county level. But be an election registrar and be the person who runs the vote in your county. And you go, well, how do I do that? I don't know what I got. Well, it's still different. Like in Arizona, it's an elected position. Every state, it's different. In my state, it's actually you apply for the job. It's a civil service job. You apply for it. And so get involved, because that's where it all begins. We wouldn't have a dirty, deep state at the federal level if we had more counties that were clean. And get involved in your county, because that's where it all that's our constitutional system. So everybody pay attention to what's going on in the deep state. Pay attention to what's going on in the WEF, the UN, as they try to undermine our beautiful constitutional system. But get involved right where you live. Show up. People say, well, the Republican Party appointed me as a poll watcher. Waste of time. Total waste of time. Anybody who that's grifters, election integrity grifters will tell people that, be an election observer, be a poll watcher. Zero influence. No, how about you work behind the counter and count the votes as a sworn election officer, or even better yet, the actual registrar for that county. That's where you can ensure you have a clean county.
I think so many people don't recognize the values of the local government on that. I appreciate hearing you say that, because so much impacts our life. And I never really thought about it from the federal level, that the county impacts it going up, but obviously it impacts it going down as well. So I appreciate you saying that. So for people to want to know more about this and learn more about how all this works, how this is coordinated, where can they buy your book? Where do they go to find out more of what you're talking about? How do they find out about this stuff?
Well, thank you, Peter. So my first book is The Nation Will Follow. That goes into detail the role also of the county system and the role of the citizen in the county system. Also, the war against the deep state, really the foundations of the mass surveillance system, which I helped create. Thank you. And then how it spun out of control and was used by the fourth, fifth, and sixth branches of government. Signed copies are available at Lindell My Store. Signed copies at Lindell My Store. Unsigned copies on Amazon. And then I'm Colonel Ret John 2 on X, Colonel Rhett John 2 on X, and Colonel Rhett John on Substack, Colonel RET John on Substack, also Colonel Rhett John on Getter and Truth.
And what was that last one, Colonel Rhett John, on what was that last one? I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. So Colonel RET John on Substack, Getter and Truth.
Okay, Getter and Truth. Okay, cool. All right. All right. Well, thank you so much, Colonel. I appreciate you being on the show. I would love to spend more time talking to you about the development of this too. I think that's really fascinating. But I do appreciate it, and I appreciate you giving the advice to people out there, because if knowing it theoretical is only part of it. So I appreciate you letting us know and having this conversation today.
Hey, all right, Peter. Thank you. An honor to be on the show with you.
Thank you.